A police officer for the city of Socorro, New Mexico, claimed he witnessed an incredible sight in the desert outside of town. An unidentified flying object with two small humanoid beings.
Some say the vessel left behind some very strange evidence that the government has tried to cover up. So, who do you believe? Project Blue Book and Uncle Sam, or a trustworthy small-town officer with a perfect reputation? His name is Sargent Lonnie Zamora. You decide.
The Rocky Mountains hold many mysteries.
Millions of people enjoy the natural beauty,
but some come across the hidden dangers.
This is Rocky Mountain Red-Handed.
I'm Becky, here with my friend, Malibu Barbie. You should have seen her on our cruise. She dressed up in her Halloween costume, and she makes a great Barbie.
And my husband is going to be Ken, and he decided he was going to dye his hair, but he decided to wear a wig. So
I think he should bleach his hair. I think he should bleach his hair.
I know, we tried for it. The stories we share are remembered by some, but forgotten by many.
Let's dive into Rocky Mountain Red-Handed.
So we are so excited to be back. Becky and I were just on a cruise. It was so fun.
It was so fun. It was so warm and humid and gorgeous. And now we're back.
And it's getting cold.
But we were on a cruise, and you eat a lot on a cruise. And whenever I get home from a cruise, I'm always like, who's going to make dinner? I'm hungry. Why is there not an assortment of different food variations for me?
Yeah, and we found some pizza that was so good, and I've just been craving it ever since.
Guys, 4-cheese pizza. It was so thin, and it was so good.
It was so good. And when I've taken my kids on cruises before we get home, and they're like, Mom, why don't we have dessert after every single meal? I'm like, no, that's just a cruise thing. I don't make you dessert.
Where's the soft serve machine, Mom? Come on.
I just need a soft serve machine at home, but I don't eat it all the time.
So we're back.
Yep. We hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that you're enjoying this Halloween season. I can't believe Halloween is almost here.
I know, and it has been so fun with these Halloween episodes, hasn't it?
It's been so fun. Also, I do have to apologize. This episode is going to be a day late. You know, kids, sickness, life, so many things. So we apologize for that. It will be a day late, but hopefully you still enjoy it.
Yes, for sure. So again, we hope everyone's happy and healthy. My voice is a little raspy. I apologize.
Becky did get sick when we got home.
Yeah.
She's finally feeling better.
Oh, gosh. Thanks for joining us here for this special Halloween time episode. This is our last Halloween episode. So we hope you enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to next year already when we can do it again.
No, I already have some fun ideas. Yeah.
So before we get into the haunted business, Rocky Mountain Red-Handed is growing each week. So please keep sharing with friends and family, rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. We do have an upcoming giveaway. We've been talking about it for a while. We 99% promise that we will have the information next week.
It'll be ready next week.
Yeah.
You've seen I posted the picture of Christian.
Yes.
On the beach wearing his t-shirt. We'll let you know that like 30 seconds after he took that picture, he wasn't looking and a wave came and like totally engulfed him, like head to toe dripping wet.
Yes. It was pretty funny.
It was great.
Yeah. So Becky and I just need to get ready so that we can take a picture and post. Becky was complaining about putting on makeup.
I haven't put makeup on today, so. So just a reminder to make sure you are subscribed and following us on social media. You can connect to all of our social medias by clicking on our link tree in our show notes. So make sure you are fully connected.
Yeah, before we get started, we'd also like to offer a heads up. Today's story contains details that might be difficult for some to hear, though we always put great care and respect into each of our cases. The true stories do often explore physical violence, sexual violence, familial violence, suicide ideation, and other content that may be upsetting or triggering to some.
Please take a moment to decide what's best for you. If you or someone you know needs help with emotional and or crisis counseling and resources, please dial 988 in the U.S.
So ask for help. You are not alone.
So without further delay, let's get to our frightening episode today.
I'm excited. So this case is from the state of New Mexico. The episode is entitled Lonnie's Story, because it seems like the strongest evidence in this sighting was Lonnie himself. He was a man of great moral character, and many believe that he never would or even could lie.
So let's get into a Lonnie story from 1964.
Let's do it, Becky.
So Mark Samuels, a producer for PBS American Experience, once described the year 1964 as, quote, "In 1964, we see everything being called into question. from our relationship with our government and the military to our notions of free speech and individual freedom.
JFK had just been shot. The civil rights movement was in full swing. Women began to burn bras in protest of the sexual awakening.
Which I completely agree with.
Or burn all the bras. And over 23,000 American soldiers were in Vietnam. It was a very tumultuous time in the United States.
Yes. Yet in 1964, it can best be defined by 4 mop-head gentlemen from Liverpool. On February 1st, 1964, I Want to Hold Your Hand hit number 1 on the U.S.
I just wanted to start singing it.
I know. Doesn't everyone?
But I'm not going to sing.
You totally should. The British invasion began. The Beatles landed at JFK. Just 6 days later, it premiered on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th. America was completely obsessed with Paul, John, George, and Ringo. Mel, who's your favorite Beatle?
I don't know if I have a favorite Beatle. I just like the Beatles. I don't know if I specifically like one. I'm sure you have a favorite.
I'm kind of boring. I'm gonna go with Paul because I've seen Paul McCartney in concert and it was amazing. But George, I always like a good dark horse. I like George.
All right.
So
I just like the Beatles as a group. I don't think I have a favorite.
Okay, my husband thinks that the Beatles are super overrated and he won't listen to them. I think he's just trying to be different.
So Christian.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Socorro, New Mexico is pretty far from New York City. Less than 2 months after the Beatles invaded the Big Apple, something very mysterious invaded the desert outside of town. And fate elected Sargent Lonnie Zamora to be its only witness that evening.
So on April 24th, 1964, Lonnie, who had been with the Socorro Police Department for 5 years, was wrapping up another quiet day. Socorro, isn't exactly a hotbed of crime, which is the way they like it in their town.
I would like that too.
Mm-hmm.
At about 5:45 p.m., Lonnie spotted a teenager who was speeding through town on Pike Street. Lonnie turned his lights on and his sirens on and began to pursue this vehicle. The chase made its way out of town, and Lonnie was following really close behind the speeder.
Suddenly, a huge bang rang throughout the area. Lonnie knew of a dynamite storage shack not too far from his location, which, I'm sorry, I didn't know that dynamite storage shacks are a thing. So I looked it up, and yeah, small towns used to keep explosives separate away from town in the desert or in rural areas.
One location?
In one location for safety, so the town didn't blow up, which kind of makes sense. But
if that catches on fire,
I know, right? Yeah. But anyway, so Lonnie knew of the dynamite storage shack for the town not too far from his location, so he decided to stop pursuing the teenager and follow up on the loud noise. He decided to turn off onto the dirt road and go and check out, the stored dynamite. Hopefully he wouldn't find it ablaze.
Yeah. Remarkably, a bright light filled the sky over the desert. It seemed to be about a half mile to 1 mile away. So Lonnie decided to call in this sighting and then investigate it further. He slowly drove down a dirt road and he watched the flame calmly fall towards the desert floor.
So Lonnie got closer to the flame and found himself on a mesa overlooking a secluded desert valley. In the valley, Lonnie witnessed something that would change his life forever. At first, he thought he was looking at an upside-down vehicle, like a car that had been flipped over.
Yeah, so he decided that he should go over there and see if there were people inside the vehicle that needed help. Maybe they were trapped in there. Possibly there was a big accident. Maybe somebody was hurt. Then as he made his way closer, about 200 feet from the object, he saw that this was no upside down car.
Yeah, this object was standing on 4 metal type legs. It was egg-shaped, metallic looking, and off-white in color. And even more incredible, standing next to the egg-shaped vessel stood 2 human-like creatures. Lonnie described them as either, quote, small adults or large kids.
The humanoid beings stood together and they were dressed in white coveralls. Lonnie reached for his police radio, yet all he could get was static. The remote desert location had no radio service, so he decided that he was going to get out of his patrol car and try and get a better look.
Yeah, which, side note here, have you noticed that this is a common occurrence when there is interaction with any type of UFO? Electronics just seem not to work.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's so
and Travis Walton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many issues with electronics.
Yeah. So Lonnie crept closer and closer to the strange sight, which I got to give him big chops for that because I would not. He saw a strange symbol on the side of the UFO. It was a red arch with an arrow inside of it. It was something he had never seen before, and there were like no words or nothing else on the craft, just this strange symbol.
Weird. Lonnie then noticed one of the creatures turned and looked at him. He said he felt as if the being felt startled to see Lonnie there so close. Lonnie was obviously startled himself, so he turned toward his car, and that's when he heard 3 big thumping noises. It was similar to the sound of a heavy car door slamming shut.
Mm-hmm. With that, Lonnie turned towards the craft and the humanoids, and the 2 beings were instantly gone, disappeared. The UFO craft stood silently for a few seconds, and then suddenly, bright blue and orange flames burst from underneath the egg-shaped craft, and it began to rise in the air.
Terrified, Lonnie tried to run back behind his car for protection, and he fell. He lost his glasses in the fall. The craft continued to rise, and a sound similar to a roar knocked him over. That's how loud it was. The sound wasn't similar to a jet engine, but more like an extremely high frequency that descended to a low frequency noise.
And again, I'm going back to Travis Walton case a few weeks ago, where, do you remember when Travis said, I could almost feel the force of it?
It's the sound
yes,
reverberates.
Mm-hmm. The sound, you can almost feel the sound more than you can hear the sound. I'm just researching this. I saw so many different similarities between these stories. I just love it. The noise stopped, and suddenly the craft sat, not moving, just hovering in the air about 30 feet off of the ground. Then slowly it began so slowly to glide away, headed west across the desert. No vapor trail, no noise. It just silently left.
And with that, let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors. Rocky Mountain Red-Handed is brought to you by Balance of Nature. I love my Balance of Nature. I take it every morning and it makes me feel so good. I do not like to eat vegetables, so I take my Balance of Nature to be able to get in the nutrients that I need. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code REDHANDED for 35% off your first order. We call it 3 and 3. I take my 3 capsules of veggies, 3 capsules of fruits, and it gives me all I need. So that's Balance of Nature, promo code REDHANDED.
Thank you to our sponsors. So we just heard Lonnie's amazing story of seeing a UFO and 2 humanoid beings. What would you do, Mel, if you saw something that incredible in the desert?
First of all, there's no way I would have crept toward it because I am a scaredy cat. So I would have ran the other way.
You did throw rocks at a skinwalker.
Yeah, because I didn't want it to come after me. I was throwing rocks. I didn't go close to it.
So would you just throw rocks at these 2 creatures and hit the egg?
I probably would just stand there stunned. I don't know what I would do. What would you do?
Oh, I wouldn't move. There's no way I would move.
So after the aircraft left the area, Lonnie sat in stunned silence. So just like we would do.
Mm-hmm.
Had he just seen what he believed he had seen? After a few moments, he gathered his wits and moved his car so he could radio for support. He reached out to an old friend named Sergeant Sam Chavez. He was someone that Lonnie knew he could trust. He told Sam, come quickly and come alone.
So when Sam arrived, he saw his old friend completely disheveled. Lonnie was covered in cold sweat, and he was obviously in shock. And Sam had been his friend for a long time. He knew that Lonnie was not easily rattled. He knew something incredible had just happened to Sam. So Sam patiently listened to Lonnie as he stammered out what he had witnessed. When Lonnie felt good enough to walk, the men started to look over the area in question, the area where Lonnie saw the UFO.
What they found was incredible evidence. Sam and Lonnie discovered indentations in the ground, a bush that had been scorched, and small greasewood bushes that had been smoldering.
The 4 indentations in the earth measured 9 inches deep by 8 inches long by 9 inches wide. So those are pretty big indentations. Sam checked the area thoroughly for tracks, any type of tracks. He saw no tire tracks, no wheel tracks, no, human-shaped footprints, nothing. The men found nothing but the indentations from the UFO and several perfectly round tracks sporadically located around the vessel area.
The strangest piece of evidence left behind? The sand that had been compacted so forcefully in the indentations felt like glass to the touch. Beck, do you know how glass is made?
Okay, I don't know. I actually was thinking, okay, did I see this on Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers? Do you remember on Mr. Rogers where he showed you how they make crayons?
Mr. Rogers. Yes, that was the best.
So great. So I was trying to think, and I don't really think I know.
So if you heat sand, like quartz sand specifically, to around 3,090 degrees Fahrenheit, it will melt into a clear liquid, which is a type of glass.
That's crazy. So in the indentations, they discovered the sand had turned into a glass-like material. That means it was over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is such a hot output right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible evidence.
Lonnie and Sam called in the Socorro Police Department, New Mexico State Police, and the United States Air Force. All met at Ground Zero and they began an investigation. One of the first things done was to verify with military bases that no testing was being done in the area. The Air Force was able to confirm that no, this was not some kind of military test that just had confused a local cop.
Yeah, officials from different law enforcement agencies and military groups were impressed by Lonnie Zamora. So in fact, here's a quote from the Project Blue Book report itself. It said, quote, "Lonnie Zamora experienced an event which left quite an impression on him. He was a serious officer, a pillar of his church, and a man well-versed in recognizing airborne vehicles in his area. He was puzzled by what he saw, and frankly, so am I," end quote.
So before we move forward, let's just make sure everyone knows what Project Blue Book was.
I love Project Blue Book. I'm such a conspiracy theorist. I just love it.
So Project Blue Book is the name given to a large Air Force project that was directed to study and investigate sightings of unidentified flying objects. It ran from 1952 to 1969. So it was their job to just look into any of these sightings that couldn't be explained, to try and figure out what had happened.
Yeah, so if you are an insomniac or you don't have a job, look up Project Blue Book. You've got a good 60, 70 hours worth of research you can just drool over. I just love it.
Have you read it all?
Oh my gosh, no. But I've read a lot of it. I love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool seeing the old documents that's been scanned in and then released. In the mid-1990s, I believe, they released a bunch of these documents that had been under lock and key, top secret. And so it's just cool seeing all these old documents.
Can you
love it.
Find them online?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Google it.
And actually, I looked some up for this story. So yeah, I'll have to show you. So, shortly after the investigation began, word started to spread across Socorro. Not of the investigation, but of other strange sightings. Many witnesses started to come forward with their own testimonies that, corroborated Lonnie's. Several people called the police in the area to report the sound of a loud roar. At the same time, Lonnie Zamora claimed to see the UFO.
Socorro police records show that 3 separate people reported a bright light glowing from an object rising in the sky, again at this exact same time that Lonnie had his sighting.
Yeah, which is that just shows that Lonnie did see something. This was not just made up or anything like that. Yeah, so then get this. A witness called an Albuquerque TV station and reported seeing a UFO-type object heading south, which would be towards Socorro. And get this, all this happened 15 minutes before Lonnie's sighting. That's awesome.
That's crazy. A local Socorro man named Opal Grinder ran a service station. The day of Lonnie's sightings, at approximately the same time, 2 tourists from Iowa named Larry Kratzner and Paul Kais pulled into Opal's station. They told Lonnie that they were surprised at how low an aircraft flew over them. Opal asked for more details about this, and the men said they thought it was a helicopter or something similar that flew super low over them and scared them.
The tour said if it was a helicopter, then it was a really funny looking one. They said it was egg-shaped with 4 legs. They also told Opal that they saw a police officer following it and driving towards the low aircraft. And who would that be? It happened about 5:45, same time as Lonnie had said. Opal's son, who was 13-year-old Jimmy Grinder, witnessed the exchange between his father and the two tourists.
Another man just outside of Socorro reported to the police that he saw something in the air in the shape of a butane tank. The craft had reportedly landed for a few moments on his father's farm and disrupted the animals, including his horses. The man who reported this incident was staying with his father in the same home at the time. The landing site left a small patch of smoldering earth, which was about 30 to 40 inches in diameter.
Now, the U.S. Army became involved on April 25th. And we all know what happens when the military gets involved in these issues, right?
My eyes.
Mm-hmm. The day after Lonnie's sighting, they stepped in. Some say this is when the cover-up began. Army Captain Richard T. Holder and FBI agent Arthur Brines traveled to Socorro and immediately interviewed Lonnie Zamora. That evening, Zamora was forced into, quote, prolonged and intensive grilling by the Air Force team, end quote. After a long meeting, the two men drove straight to the site of Lonnie's story. The two men meaning Army Captain Richard T. Holder and FBI agent Arthur Brines. So they went out there using only flashlights. The men began a search of the area.
The next morning, as locals and other officials returned to the site, they immediately noticed that something was terribly wrong. The site had been disrupted. The indentations were destroyed, and the glass-like earth had disappeared. So apparently, they had been, removed by someone, is what it looked like.
And who would remove something like that? Government officials?
Listen, we 100% back the blue. We love our police officers, but they might be covering up some UFO.
These are police officers, though. These are FBI agents and high-ranking military officials.
I support all of you if you're listening.
Yes, for sure. So if you would like to hear from Lonnie Zamora, Sam Chavez, Richard Holder, Jimmy Grinder, and more, check this out, you guys. You can find them on an old episode of the famous Unsolved Mysteries. Do you remember that from the 90s?
Love that show.
My parents let me stay up. It was on Thursday nights. My parents let me stay up and watch that and Moonlighting. Do you remember Moonlighting?
No.
Oh, it was so good.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm not a creepy show watcher, though. I like Unsolved Mysteries, but it creeped me out.
Moonlighting had Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. It was my favorite, and I was 8. So anyway, but yeah, it's in our show notes. Go check it out. It's such a fun episode to watch, and you will see Lonnie interviewed, Sam Chavez, all of these guys were interviewed for the old episode, so check it out. So again, it's in our show notes, so go check it out.
Dr. James E. McDonald commented on the abuse of the evidence left at the site location. He said, quote, investigating officers from the Air Force Project Blue Book had taken over the site, gleaned every piece of burned brush and rocks, and reportedly fused sand. They had cleaned it out fully, taking the physical evidence away to sites unknown. No independent scientists or researchers had been able to learn the results of any analysis the Air Force might have done, end quote.
So imagine if we had that evidence. Imagine if it hadn't been tampered with,
right,
and we could have different scientists look it over and give their opinion.
So in your conspiracy theorist brain, why do you think the government would cover up something like this?
Why not?
But what would be the point?
I think for control, keeping the public in the dark.
I just don't I don't know. I just don't see a strong reason that the government would put in a ton of effort to make us think this doesn't happen.
I don't know. I think that knowledge is power.
Yeah. Just curious. Conspiracy theorists over here.
No explanation has ever been given regarding the removal of the evidence. In fact, speaking of stolen evidence, on the initial day of Lonnie's sighting, Officer Ted Jordan with the New Mexico State Police had a 35mm camera with him that day. So he took it upon himself to photograph evidence. He reportedly took multiple pictures of 4 of the indentations in the ground, the scorched bush, and what Officer Jordan remembers to be, quote, footprints shaped like coffee cups. So we had photographic evidence. And guess what happened to that evidence? Why don't you tell us, Mal?
I know. So that must be the perfect circles that others had reported.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like how he described it as the shape of coffee cups. Yeah. I think it's adorable.
The Air Force saw him taking photographs, and they confiscated his camera and film. Later, he contacted the Air Force to see if he could view his photos and get his camera back, and the Air Force refused. They reported to him that the film and camera did not work anymore due to damage by radiation.
Right. So after the investigation was complete, the Air Force created 2 reports. Report 1 was made public and pretty much shrugged off the entire account. It said, quote, "There was no evidence presented that the object was extraterrestrial in origin or represented a threat to the security of the United States."
Report 2, which was deemed confidential, told a different story. The report was written by Lieutenant Colonel Hector Quintanilla, USAF, who just so happened to be the former head of Project Blue Book. The tone of his report was very different from the one that was made public.
So Quintanilla is quoted in the report saying, quote, "Lonnie Zamora experienced an event which left quite an impression on him. He was a serious officer, a pillar of his church, and a man well-versed in recognizing airborne vehicles in his area. He was puzzled with what he saw, and frankly, so am I." I believe we shared that earlier in the episode. And that's such a good example of that the Air Force did try to, get to know Lonnie as a person, and he was an upstanding person. He was a man of his word. He wasn't, quick to over-exaggerate or be dramatic. He was a solid officer.
And he wasn't known to be on drugs.
Yes.
Drugs all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So continuing the quote, "And yet I've always had some doubt about the case, even though it is the best documented case on record. In spite of the fact that I conducted the most thorough investigation that was humanly possible, the vehicle of stimulus that scared Zamora to the point of panic has never been found."
Project Blue Book and the military continued to try to control the narrative. During an interview with KRSC's Walter Schroed shortly after the incident, Zamora was asked about the markings on the UFO. He stated live on air, quote, "They don't want me to say nothing about the red markings," end quote. In fact, the Air Force asked Zamora to not share anything about the markings and actually came up with an alternative marker to release to the public.
Yes, so the Air Force asked Lonnie to come up with a alternative marker. They wanted to keep the marker that Lonnie had sketched out. They wanted to keep that confidential and release another one in the public report just so they would know any copycats or anything like that. They tried to confuse the public pretty much and keep the real marker confidential. Does that make sense? Yeah. So after the involvement of the Air Force, FBI, and the U.S. Army, the physical evidence of Lonnie's experience has been lost forever. Thanks so much. No glass sand deposits, no scorched bushes, no circular prints, nothing. The photos, everything, it's gone.
Oh my gosh, why?
I know. Like you said, what's the point?
Yeah, just give us the information. We'd love to know what's really happening.
Exactly. So let's take our last break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll cool down for a minute.
Give your brain the natural nutrients, blood flow, and neurotransmitter support it needs to make the fight with depression an unfair fight.
Get stronger daily with Whole Supplement.
Build momentum each day with the Whole Depression Release Stack, the 3 targeted daily formulas that will help you feel, enjoy, and progress again.
So, how do you take the whole stack?
1. Wake Up Formula.
Take Wake Up in the morning with a glass of water to kick off your day with motivation and energy. Number 2 is the Daytime Formula.
Take daytime around lunch to ensure you have the focus, mood, and productivity to power through the day.
That sounds like something we all need. Number 3, the Sleep It Off Formula.
Take Sleep It Off about an hour before you plan to go to sleep for amazing rest and brain support that will consistently set you up for better days.
I've experienced depression since I was a teen. I try to do my best to take care of my mental and emotional health and manage my anxiety and depression. But even with medication, I can find myself struggling some days. I started taking Whole Supplement just a couple weeks ago, and I already feel like I am giving my body the armor it needs to win the fight each and every day.
The ingredients in Whole Supplements have been used for hundreds of years. They just haven't been put together this way to help people struggling with depression. There are no proprietary blends and no hidden ingredients in Whole Supplement.
So here's Adam Steer, founder and CDO of Whole Supplement.
Started Whole Supplement with the mission to help others who, like myself, have struggled with finding relief from depression and anxiety. Our number one goal is to empower everyone we can to make meaningful progress every single day.
So now is the time to take care of your emotional and mental health.
During the pre-launch offer, you can receive the entire whole depression relief stack at 15% off.
Go to wholesupplement.com and use code Rocky Mountain.
Again, go to wholesupplement.com and use coupon code Rocky Mountain.
Simplify your fight with the whole stack from Whole Supplement. And we are back. Thank you so much to our sponsors.
And we are still frustrated with our government destroying and hiding evidence on this case, but, that's okay. We still love you, America.
Yes.
So, what are you going to do about it, right?
The government didn't stop the interest of ufologists. Enter the famous Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He is an astronomer, a UFO expert, and consultant for Project Blue Book. If you recognize his name, we did speak about him in our Snowflake, Arizona episode about Travis Walton a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Dr. Hynek was awesome. Remember, he went to Snowflake and talked to Travis. He is like the tip-top man in the ufology community.
Oh, he'd be so interesting to talk to.
He would be. Dr. Hynek traveled to Socorro and studied what was left at the landing site. He talked with Lonnie at length and asked him countless questions. He listened to everything Lonnie had to say about the experience, and he thoughtfully studied the evidence available. He's a man that he did the same thing with Travis Walton. He goes in and just tries to get a feel for the community and just immerse himself into the incident.
Dr. Hynek agreed with most people. The most persuasive piece of evidence was Lonnie himself. He was impressed by Lonnie as a man. He believed there was no chance of a hoax created by Lonnie, and he really expressed his disdain for the way Project Blue Book had handled the investigation.
Which means a lot coming from Dr. Hynek because he is a consultant for Project Blue Book, So Dr. Hynek believed that not even Project Blue Book believed the lies that it had tried to spread. He thought that the Air Force didn't want to be harassed by Congress at the time and other government agencies, so, it was just easier to deny the truth of Lonnie's sighting.
So now, of course, enter the debunkers.
Now remember, you're not a debunker.
I'm not.
You're a skeptic.
Yeah, exactly.
Skeptics are good. Yeah.
We discussed these guys in Travis's case a couple of weeks ago. At the top of the list is the same man who actually tried to bribe Travis's witnesses and friends. His name is Philip Klass. Do you remember him?
Yeah. Do you remember he followed one of Travis's friends to Texas and offered him what was it, $20,000 or something?
To go on and say that it had never happened.
Yeah. Well, Philip Klass believed that Lonnie just saw, quote, a ball lightning, a type of lightning strike. Then he also accused Lonnie of making it up to increase tourism in the area. Come on, Philip.
Stuart Campbell, another famous debunker, claimed that Lonnie just saw a mirage of a star or maybe even a hot air balloon.
Yeah, these guys sound like they don't think much of Lonnie or his intelligence level, don't you think?
Yeah, it sounds like they really don't think much of him. It would be hard to think that a hot air balloon was some kind of UFO. Right? I feel like that's an obvious one.
I totally see what you're saying. And also, I think here's the difference is that no matter what his intelligence level is, there's street smart, which Lonnie is, I believe, and then also integrity. Lonnie's not gonna just all of a sudden make up an incredible story.
Right.
What's the purpose?
Right. What does he gain from it?
Mm-hmm. So some questions if Lonnie had witnessed a NASA survey probe. In fact, a NASA probe was being tested at White Sands testing site that very day. White Sands is a testing site there in New Mexico, not far away. Yet this seems extremely unlikely for a couple reasons. It's located about 100 miles away from Socorro, and most importantly, the probe looks totally different than Lonnie's egg-shaped aircraft. I saw pics of the NASA probe, and it looks like a satellite to me. So I don't think that would have been easily confused for Lonnie.
Well, and he probably would have described it different, right? If that's what he had seen, he would have described it to look like what it looked like.
Not an egg shape on four legs. I mean, it looks exactly like a satellite to me.
So some other skeptics question if Lonnie may have been tricked by students from New Mexico Tech. Sterling Colgate, he is the president of New Mexico Tech, said that what Lonnie saw could have been a, quote, candle in a balloon, not sophisticated. And I mean, again, it's just calling into question his intelligence, his integrity, right? Like, this comes back to the conversation that we've had before about why people don't want to come forward when they see this type of thing, right? Because your integrity, your intelligence, everything is just called into question. So I think a lot of people don't make these type of reports, and I don't blame them because they just get attacked and torn apart.
Yeah, I completely understand why someone wouldn't come forward, for sure. So apparently, Lonnie had worked at the campus of New Mexico Tech, and he was not very popular with the students, which, come on, let's be honest, what cop on a university campus is popular with students? Right. So the question is, were the students trying to, get him back, playing a prank? If yes, why hasn't any of the students ever come forward? No one's ever come forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. On an interagency document dated April 27, 1964, the FBI reports, quote, a police officer described as sober, dependable, mature, and not known to engage in flights of fantasy, reported seeing an unidentified flying object rise from the earth with a roar, emitting bluish and orange flames, and disappear over a distant mountain. When reported his observations, representatives of the local law enforcement agencies searched the scene and noted 4 small, irregularly shaped smoldering areas and 4 regular depressed areas at the site.
Continuing quote, the unidentified flying object was described as oval-shaped, about 20 feet long, with a red insignia. There is no indication in the reference teletype that Air Force has been advised. Our policy is not to investigate, but assure that the Air Force is cognizant. Military is investigating and the Albuquerque office is maintaining liaison. Mailed April 28, 1964.
Project Blue Book also concluded in their report that there were no findings of automobile markings, no radioactivity found at the site, no aircraft or helicopters were in operation in the area within 300 miles, and no irregular soil samples. Nothing.
Yet, the story, Lonnie's story, has maintained the test of time. I mean, this happened back in 1964. A man, an honorable man of the law, came across a boom and a bright light, and it changed his life. Like just how you said, Mel, is that, everything in his life was fallen under question. They, insulted him, insulted his intelligence, his honor, and yet, he was teased and sometimes called a liar, yet he never changed his story, not even for a second. When asked time and time again about his story, his response always included, quote, I am a man of my word.
Which I think, like we talked about earlier, I think this is huge to stick with your story after you are just being so attacked. I feel like it would be easier to be like, okay, never mind, leave me alone.
I must have, I was confused. Yeah.
So I feel like that's like a huge, that's just a huge thing to stick to your story for so long.
Yeah. So the question is, Mel, do you believe Lonnie? Don't you love how I put you on the spot?
Every time you put me on the spot. The more we're doing these episodes, I'm maybe coming around to your side a little bit. I'm still skeptical.
Which is good.
Yeah. But I could believe it.
Good. That's good to hear.
You're working hard on me. Maybe after next October, I'll be totally...
You're going to be like conspiracy theorist, like up all night, ignoring your kids, just internet sleuthing.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds healthy.
It's such a good turn in life, for sure. So... well, let's get on to our Rocky Mountain redemption for this week, straight from where else? Socorro.
A local business in Socorro wants to honor Lonnie Zamora and the history of his beloved city.
Yeah, just this year, San Miguel Pottery Land owner Joe Torres announced his plans to promote the story of Lonnie's sighting further with a brand new mural painted on the side of his store, which he hopes will honor Zamora, who dealt with a lot of teasing over the incident over the years.
He said, quote, when I heard the story, they said that Lonnie took a lot of crap over it. A lot of people just didn't believe the man, and he got teased a lot. My grandfather, Joe Torres Sr., he said that there was times where Lonnie says, I really seen something, but sometimes with all the bull crap that they give me and all the kidding around, it's not worth me saying that. but he goes, I have to stick to my word. I did see it. And
See, again, wow,
Sticks
it's
to it,
amazing.
yeah.
The mural will not be the first in town to depict Zamora. The city of Socorro itself commissioned a mural depicting Zamora's sighting, but the new mural will depict Zamora in his police officer uniform, along with a small write-up about who he was. It will also include an artist's interpretation of the egg-shaped craft Zamora reported seeing that day, the symbol he said he saw on the craft, and the figures he reported seeing in white coveralls near the craft.
Muralist B.J. Lesperance is already hard at work on the painting. Torres would like the city to take remembering the reported UFO sighting farther than just a new mural. He envisions like a whole alien-themed festival that could commemorate the story.
I love that Socorro is holds tight to the history of Lonnie's sighting. I think that's really, really cool.
And if they do a festival, that might have to be on our Rocky Mountain Red-Handed tour.
Road trip.
Yes. Sounds like we're just adding all sorts of things to our list.
Yeah. And also Socorro, New Mexico people. I tried to find an updated picture of the mural. I could not find it because the article had just been announced but not started. So, hey, if you're in the area and you see the mural, snap a picture. Let's see it. Please send it to us.
Well, if we get a picture, we'll post it on our social medias and tag whoever sent it to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, I have an idea, and I'm just bringing this on Becky.
Let's do it.
If somebody can get us a picture of it, we will send you a free t-shirt.
Absolutely.
Okay, so.
And they're nice t-shirts, guys. They're super soft.
Yep.
I'm kind of picky on my tees.
That will be our first winner. If you can get a picture, send
please.
Okay. So that is our Rocky Mountain redemption for the week.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget to stop by Socorro if you are passing through the area in New Mexico.
Thank you so much for listening today. We want to remind you to follow us on our social medias. You can check out the link tree in our show notes to find all the places.
All the places. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts.
It really helps us out.
So we will be back next Wednesday with a story we're going to switch to for November. We're going to switch to Indigenous cases all month.
Yes.
And actually one for Veterans Day as well. November is Native American History Month. And so we're going to feature just Indigenous cases. So it should be good.
Yeah.
So until next week.
Keep your hands clean.